You're listening to the Precision Shooting Podcast, discussing all aspects of precision and long-range rifle shooting. This episode is brought to you by Projectile Warehouse. Find your perfect projectile. And now, over to your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to the Precision Shooting Podcast. My name is Rusty, and with me tonight, back with the original crew, Andrew to my right. How are you, Andrew?
Very good, thanks. And yourself?
Yeah, not bad. And over there for those who are watching this one, is Greg. How you doing, Greg?
Yeah, good. Yourself?
Yeah, not bad. Well, it's been a little while. How you guys been?
Yeah, good, mate. Good.
Yeah.
Not shooting enough.
No, that's the usual caper, isn't it? Normally not shooting as much as we'd all like. Craig, you brought a gun in tonight. Let us tell us about what the story is, mate. Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, so look, what I've done is I was running for a thermal rig, and you'll probably remember from previous episodes. Andrew talked about better configurations for like a thermal rig, getting in and out of cars and that sort of stuff. So from there, I went and from those ideas that I stole from him quite openly, I went and got a chassis for my Tikka. So I ended up getting an MDT ESS.
Yeah, nice.
Which I'm really happy with. So
looks good.
I've had a couple of nights out shooting with it, and it's my first chassis. But in comparison to a standard, I was running a Tikka Super Varmint compared to a standard Super Varmint stock.
Yeah,
a lot more stable for me. So
brilliant.
I really, really like it. And you've been drinking long?
Just started.
Sam just missed his mouth with a drink.
Put into my face.
Yeah.
But not my mouth.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But and the other thing I picked up was one of the challenges with thermal hunting is judging range.
Oh yeah.
It's very, very difficult to judge range accurately through a thermal scope.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked up a Silencer Co. Radius. So I've fitted that to the chassis.
And I remember you ordering that at an Irish pub. with Ben from the Armoury.
Yep.
And I seem to remember I ordered one as well. And I'm suspecting those kill turkeys perhaps had a bit of a hand to play in the fact that Ben may not have remembered that. Did you remind him afterwards?
No, I didn't even know you had ordered one.
No, but did you remind him about yours afterwards?
I followed up.
See, maybe that's where I've gone wrong. I assumed that the few Kilkennys in that they were still going to...
And I paid him the next day, so that probably helped things along a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can see why I didn't end up with one now.
Yeah, but definitely if the Radius, they're basically, Sam, you pointed out, I think, Sam or Andrew, that they were half price in the US at the moment. So,
yep, I did let you know that.
Yeah, if you are keen for one of those.
Are they still that way?
At the moment, they are.
They are.
But
Ben Jensen, if you're listening.
Ben Jensen. So Ben from
hook us up.
Ben from the Armoury. Get on to him. He's got a good contact for getting him into Australia pretty quick.
Yeah.
No problem. So, and also he's getting in the MDT ESS chassis as well. So
yeah, got one of those on order.
Yep. So Ben from the Armoury, if you want any of those,
just plugging away. Well, while we are plugging away, one of our sponsors, Projectile Warehouse, that one there, we've got a 10% voucher for and 10% off, not 10% on, 10% off voucher for anyone listening. So if you go over to the Projectile Warehouse website, and you put in the coupon area, PSP, as in Precision Shooting Podcast, and then 10, that will take 10% off all orders. And that is going through to the end of July. So make sure you hit that up and save some money. That'd be good.
Very good.
Andrew, any stories to tell? Are you allowed to reveal what you're doing tomorrow?
Oh, I'm at work all day, Sam. At work all day.
That's what I thought.
Hard
That's
at
what
work.
I thought. Yeah. No, working hard.
A different work environment, but I'll be hard at work.
Good.
No.
We'll move on from that discussion then. Cool. So it's been. Well, I'm trying to remember the last time we all sat down and did one of these, because we've had a few other podcasts go out since that. Was that before the PRS?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So it's a little while ago then. As we put in that last podcast, we did PRS based. It went well. It was good fun. Thoroughly enjoyed myself. I did make, and I'm going to harp on this point just to rub it into the other guys. That I stayed in a motel and made the smart decisions, and it was 22 degrees a night, and it was quite nice and comfortable. Not -1. But anyway, those listening will remember how cold it was. And yeah, it was good fun time. Really enjoyed it. And waiting to be able to release information on the next event once we actually have that information confirmed. So I think I'm allowed to say we're the official media partner of PRS Australia. Not that means a lot. We just talk about it from time to time on the podcast. that's what that actually means. But the details, as soon as we have them to hand, we'll be putting them out, whatever the event may be. And so we've had a few questions and emails and stuff, and I think we just wanted to follow up on a few things in this particular episode. And we also have Facebook Live going at the moment, and people may be, there's a few people watching us. Hey guys, how you doing? So if anyone is actually watching on Facebook and wants to hit us up with something to discuss or add into the question mix, please do. So there was a message that came through. Oh, perhaps I shall read it out, which I haven't thought this through well because my phone is now being used for Facebook Live, and that's probably the best place to read the message off. Anyway, we shall adapt and overcome. So, gentleman by the name of Ben writes in. He said he's enjoying listening, been planning an F-Class open build for a while now, but you've turned me towards the light. So he has a question about actions. I'm a big fan of the Learn to Shoot What You Already Have school of thought, which is good and financially a good way to do it. The currently has a Hauer Varmint 22-50 that he's honing his reloading skills with, but he's considering rebarreling to a more appropriate caliber for PRS style shooting. Will this give me a better dollar versus capability return than buying, say, a Tikka, REM 700, or even a custom action? And there's another question, but perhaps let's cover that one there. So an interesting point, and I think a lot of guys are going to find this as that PRS stuff becomes more popular. They've got something that's appropriate, the 22-50. Great one to sort of break in on and get to know your skills. And then do we rebarrel that one and repurpose it, or do we buy something different? And if we do buy something different, do we go through a Tikka or REM or something equivalent, or do we bump it up and get a Defiance? Well, I'm going to say Greg would be happier if you get yourself a Defiance, put some more money in his pocket. But if we take that out of the equation, what are you guys thinking?
I guess it depends probably on how much he really wants to spend. I mean, if you were to rebarrel it, about $1,000 or so to rebarrel with a decent barrel.
Yeah.
So, but then you got to look at the rest of the system as well. The stock, for example, and the sort of the feeding system. Is it presumably it'll be a fixed, magazine system. Won't be a detachable mag. It may possibly be detachable, but
yeah, it could be for a Hauer.
I guess for the PRS type stuff, a detachable mag is very preferable.
Yeah, it I would say essential. It really is essential for that type of thing.
So, I mean, I guess, initially, say he was to have a, the factory detachable magazine option, a straight rebarrel with a good match barrel would be, say, $1,000 odd, and that's going to put him into, he'll be up and going, in a 6.5 Creedmoor or whatever he wants to run.
Sure.
And then I guess he'd always have the opportunity or the option to go with an aftermarket stock or a chassis. So, like the one you got there, Greg, would be, obviously it takes, AI compatible magazines.
Yep.
They're sub $1,000, are they, Greg, or around that sort of money?
About $1,000 once you get it posted. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Just over. Yeah.
So you look at, say, roughly a couple of grand. He would have a
pretty good.
The Hauer is a good action. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Good action, match grade barrel with a top line sort of chassis fitted.
And there's enough accessories around now for the Hauers that you're really not necessarily hugely limited.
No, it's good triggers and it's good rails, and that's pretty much all you need, really. So I personally, I'd probably say going down the line of, without wanting to outlay big dollars.
Yep.
I mean, you look at what are the new Tikka TAC A1s, what are they, about $3,000, 3.1?
Yeah, just over 3.
Yeah. So, he's going to come out, effectively with, outlaying less money and sort of similar capabilities, I guess. So, I would probably suggest going down that line of working on the platform he's got.
Sure.
Unless he's like Greg, has got plenty to throw around. So.
Yeah, well, no, that's a fair point. Certainly a fair point. Greg, what's your take on it?
Oh, look, I'm much in the same vein as Andrew. I haven't done a lot of builds myself, but I'm a fan of rebarreling.
Yep.
I've only had positive experiences with rebarreling. So
Okay.
I think it probably comes down to how much you've already spent on the peripherals. If you've already got a chassis that for that action.
Yeah.
If you've, it's a whole equation you've got to put down. But like what Andrew suggested is a great idea for that. Like basically rebarrel that Hauer action into a aftermarket chassis. You'd be in a pretty good place to get out there and compete.
There's all sorts of ways you can go with it, isn't there?
Yeah, that's right.
And I don't think anything is particularly wrong. One of the things that I'd probably sort of bring up as a possible point, perhaps get your feedback on it again. For me, I like having a 22-50. And so I like having that as my varmint spotlighting night gun. And so I'd be more inclined to buy something separate to then work on actually competing. Now, could be that he buys a Hauer again. If he's comfortable with that action, knows it very well and familiar with it, to buy the same thing in a 6.5 Creed or something like that in the Hauer could be another option. But I'd probably sort of go a little bit more towards keeping the 250 running as a 250. I mean, it depends on his situation. If he rarely gets out spotlighting or anything like that, then of course it'd be a good option. But if he does spotlight regularly, I'd probably keep that and build something separate because, and perhaps a bit of clarity around that, you're not always going to utilise different ammo in one gun. It's quite possible to do, but you may be limited in running something a bit more targety type projectile in for your competition setup, and something a bit more sort of varmint based for your spotlighting sort of stuffs. Because I know I've spotlighted with my 260 sort of comp gun, and it was I basically had to shoot them in the head because that's the only way they would actually drop comfortably. So so that's perhaps one thought. But I think the point you raised up, Greg, is how much has been spent on those peripheral items. Yeah. If he's invested heavily in accessories and bits and pieces for that gun, then a rebarrel makes heaps of sense.
Yeah, or if he's not intending to use the gun, if he's not a spotlight, it's just his first centerfire or whatever it might be.
Completely. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, if you leave it as is and go and build something from scratch, then it's basically going to sit in the safe and not get used. You may as well utilise it. So I guess it depends on his intention, his application. So
yeah, and I had a similar question somewhere else the other day, and I was on the phone somewhere. Someone rang me about something, and and the question came up: rebarreled for a more appropriate caliber. And I honestly don't recall what they were running at the time, but the question did come up, and I thought, well, if there's no particular need to rebarrel like now, get the most out of that barrel, because by the time you finish wearing that barrel out, you'll be a pretty good shot. If you're conscious about it, so you could actually make the most of the life of that barrel, so that when you then upgrade from it. You haven't got any sort of wasted money. You haven't got a barrel there that's still got life on it that you're not utilising.
I guess it depends as well, because I think with certainly there's velocity limitations with PRS or whatever.
Yeah.
So if that's a concern, then you can't go in and run 3,800 feet a second loads with a 250, for example.
No. So and absolutely, and that will depend on where he if he's going to intend to compete in the next 6 months or so and not wear his barrel out, or if he's in a position where he actually will wear that barrel out in the next 6 months or 9 months or whatever. So, yeah, of course, lots of unknowns. So on to the second part of the question. Let's say he decides to keep the Hauer as it is. Oh, the age-old question of what does he buy next? Perhaps let's talk about it from a concept of like a Tikka Remy type scenario to a custom action. Where do you draw the line on that?
I think without knowing his budget, it's a little bit difficult to know, because I think, I mean, a Defiance, for example, or, something of that level, you're looking at over $2,000 for the action alone.
Oh, Greg will hook you up, I'm sure.
Yeah. So
yeah,
2.5
three and a half.
So I mean, you got that alone versus, I mean, you can buy a base model, Tikka or Rem 700 for half that. So yeah, it's one of those things. It comes down to how much money you've got to spend on it, or you're prepared to spend on it. Custom gear is nice. There's no doubt about it. Defiance is certainly a lot nicer than a Tikka or a Rem, but not essential. So without knowing sort of what he wants to spend, it's a little bit difficult to say how he should go. I guess given that he seems to be a fairly new shooter in the scene, I'd probably suggest going something modified factory to start with.
Sure.
I don't necessarily think he's going to get big benefit from going with a Defiance. And if he's got heaps of money and he likes nice gear, then by all means go ahead. But I mean, Tikkas are very, very nice action for the money. They're smooth, pretty hard to fault them. A lot of aftermarket sort of bits and pieces available too. So
yeah.
And I think also, Sam, I think you mentioned to me too that a lot of the practical rifle, because I haven't actually competed in one of the PRIs or PRSs, but I know there's a lean towards possibly bigger targets with more of an emphasis on positional technique. So
I think it's a balance. It's a
we're talking about the US guy saying, that when you're choosing target size, that necessarily having small targets isn't what it's about. Where I'm heading is focusing on positional type elements rather than pure accuracy out of your rifle might be a better place to lean in the early stages entering than worrying about shooting mosquitoes at 400 metres,
Yeah, so basically, if you've got a half MOA gun that is well suited physically to shooting barricades and that sort of thing, it's better than an F-class style rifle that's heavy, unbalanced, that shoots 1/8 of a minute, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not going to be the difference. That level of accuracy is not so much what the focus is on. It's more the getting into position quickly,
getting into position, settling, and getting the shot released. Yeah, and follow up.
So a couple of questions are coming through. Which is the benefit, or maybe some comments as well, which is excellent. So we're more than welcome for people to disagree with us. That's good. So the Andy McNeil suggests to buy another Hauer Barrett action because they're cheap, because they're $500-$600, something along those lines.
And they sell them as a barreled action rather than a whole platform.
Yeah, that's right. So it's certainly plenty of options with that as well. So, but Greg obviously wants everyone to buy Defiance actions. That's the best way. So,
I mean, for example, if you could get a Hauer barreled action, a varmint barrel, and the triggers on the Hauers are pretty good, and they can certainly be worked on to get them really nice. And say 6.5 Creed and then put it into a MDT chassis, you're going to come out of that, even if you fit a brake to it, for under $2,000.
Yep.
So it's probably not a bad option.
Yeah, not a bad little setup.
Yeah, well and truly. Now the second part of the question here, let me turn around to check this one out. Could you also talk about lapping truing bolts, as I've noticed uneven wear on the lugs? Andrew, we're going to throw that one to you, I think.
Yeah, look, there's a little bit of difference between lapping and truing, depending on the level of how how uneven the contact is. To a fair degree, I'd probably wouldn't recommend doing either unless you're fitting a new barrel, because basically what it's doing is actually setting the bolt back a little bit. If you put lapping paste on the the bearing surfaces of your locking lugs, and then proceed to lap it, what it's effectively doing is setting the bolt back a very small amount.
Mm-hmm.
So certainly if you're going to go down that option, particularly with truing, if you're going to be putting the bolt up in a lathe and taking a cut off those faces,
Yep.
Definitely you would want to do it only if you're rebarreling, so that you would do the work on the action and then take all your measurements and then cut your barrel to suit.
Yep.
You could lap, depending on how uneven the contact is, you could certainly lap the lugs on a factory gun.
Yep.
As long as they're not too far out. Without seeing the particular action, you're never going to get them perfectly even, particularly on a factory action without, as I said, going down the rebarreling line.
Yep.
And I'm not sure, to be honest, that just purely lapping them on a factory action, if you're not rebarreling, is going to give you a really worthwhile advantage.
Yeah, okay.
They tend to kind of work themselves in anyway over a fair bit of time, but I certainly wouldn't touch the bolt as far as putting it in a lathe and taking a cut off the bearing surfaces, like the bolt, the bearing surfaces on the lugs.
Sure. Yep.
At most, I would lap it, but again, what it's actually doing is setting it back, so it will change your headspace measurements, and it's not going to be by a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got about roughly 4 thou between the go and the no go on headspace, so you're never going to take that off with lapping unless you put beach sand in there and lap with that. But so
Yep.
To be honest, I wouldn't bother personally unless I was rebarreling. I guess the long and short of it.
Yeah, okay. So when you're going to get your work done, get it all done at once.
Correct. Yep.
Rather than bit by bit.
Yeah, and it actually is more meaningful too, because you can actually properly, if your lugs are really not evenly bearing, then you can address that issue at the time.
Yep.
Before your barrel's fitted and actually fix the problem.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, cool. So worthwhile getting it all done together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, nice. We've got some general banter going on off the Facebook live stream, but not necessarily related to exactly what we're talking about. So, but someone did want to make mention that there is the practical rifle shooting NT, which we'll talk about shortly as well. So I think we've covered off on Ben's questions. Ben, whatever else you've got to ask us, let us know, mate. But it is, a lot of this stuff is becoming quite common questions and regular sort of interest because of the, with PRS sort of become more prevalent here. And of course, as more events come on board, we'll certainly see more of it.
Good stuff.
Yeah, but I think we've probably covered enough. There'll be something we'll cover off at the end of this podcast that might be very helpful for a lot of those guys who are going to get into PRS, who are very new to it. So as I alluded to before, the next sort of major match in terms of practical or precision rifle shooting is the NT practical rifle shoot, which is at the beginning of August, August 4th to the 6th, and I'm planning on heading up at this stage.
Yeah, rumour is you're going to have a shot. Is that right?
I may actually get behind a gun for the first time comp in a long time, so that should be really good fun because normally I'm behind the iPad getting scoring or whatever it is I'm doing.
And it was good that you off air you mentioned that if you won that AI, it was going to be passed on to me. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah, podcast prize, wasn't it?
But then you said, "Nah, I'm not interested. I'm all for Desert Tech." So I shall
Defiance.
I shall leave that. Well, Greg's got the Defiance sorted out. So, so if I do win that AI, you can shoot it if you like, Andrew.
I could probably think of things I'll do to it, but I won't mention them
You
on
won't
air.
shoot it. All right, okay, good. Yeah, so looking forward to it. I've just got to. I'm debating whether I go down the preferred approach and actually sort of get some practice in and some time and some load development done and all that sort of gear, or I take the Scotty and Andy approach and just sort of put a gun together the night before and hope for the best. So I'm.
You made up a trainer, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I've got a trainer, but but it's a long time between now and August, and I don't know whether what I'm shooting now is actually what I'm going to be shooting in the comp.
Yeah, what was the drill in your last podcast with the Aussie PRS shooter? You said the 11-second drill or whatever it was.
Oh, with Paul Reed. Yeah, the 11 second drill.
In a lounge room with the missus and kids.
Yep. Yeah, that's the 11-second drill is a good option for sure. Just I'm pretty time poor, and 11 seconds is a long time really in the scheme of things. So that's that's podcast editing I could be doing right there, or perhaps working on the PRI video, maybe. So
Butters wouldn't be that lucky.
No, another couple of years on that PRI video, Butters. So we, so that's the next one on the calendar. So guys, if you are thinking about wanting to get into the next shot, the next shoot, that one, I mean, Darwin in August. That's
It's not going to be 0 degrees.
Yeah, it's not going to be 0 degrees. It's going to be pretty darn
30,
nice.
30 odd degrees, I would imagine.
August.
Sunny. Yep.
Still dry up there, isn't it?
Middle of the dry. It'd be beautiful.
Yep. Yeah, it'd be lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. So August is going to be beautiful up there, and should be good fun shoot. Butters does run a good comp, from what I'm told, I assume.
He's got a pretty healthy looking prize table, I think. So
yeah, that's it.
There's some good incentive for guys to go there.
So, guys, if you're thinking about getting up to the next practical shoot, Darwin is going to be good fun, and I think it will be. It's always good to meet people, and Darwin's a beautiful place that time of year, and no doubt there should be some challenging courses of fire and some good people around. And I imagine I'll probably take the podcast gear up there, and we'll do something up there as well. So, not that that's necessarily incentive; that may actually keep people away. Never mind, you don't have to be on the podcast if you don't want to. Butters, you're on the pod. Oh no, Butters will be on the podcast anyway, won't he? He'll be quite happy to do that. We just had a question come through. Let me grab that.
Was it about my beard?
It's looking a little grey.
Yeah, it is.
So, one of the questions that's come through on Facebook Live is there a way that you guys do quick math in your head when you see prices in US dollars? I've been listening to your podcast from America, awesome, and wonder when you say price in AUD, how that compares to our prices here. I guess it comes down to how much of a price bump do you experience beyond the exchange rate. Yeah, okay.
Depends on the item, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, there is other elements of that and who it comes through and all that sort of gear, but, as a bit of a correlation. Some of the stuff that I've bought in, generally it's about a one. So if it's $1,000 in the US, it's $1,600 Australian. And that's including usually some freight aspects, some duties and GST and bits and pieces. So I usually find about a 1.6 factor, and that of course varies from day to day. Yeah,
and who's bringing the items into? Yeah,
sure. That's based on stuff that I've bought in as well. So and that'll vary a little bit depending if you're under the GST, the tax threshold here, and a few other bits and pieces. So to Brayton, thank you very much for listening from the US. It's wonderful to have some overseas listeners, and thanks for contributing. Got a question there from Scott Patel. This is the one that distracted me before, which was, what cartridge, I'm scrolling the wrong way, what cartridge do you recommend for a new starter in PRS matches? And I'd tell them probably not 300 Win Mag, Scotty. That's probably what I'd go with. I think we probably cover that a huge amount, but usually in the well, my simple answer to that one is if you are reloading, that's probably the deciding factor. And if you are reloading, probably a Creedmoor or a 6.5 by 47 or a 6mm Creed or something on those lines would be a really good, sensible way to go. 260 as well, and that's what I shoot and that's what I like. If you are not reloading, 308 would